is none other than Becky Milne.
When I train the police, we train them in about 3-4 hours on what is human memory.
Your learning and your remembering environment differed, memory was not as good.
Because we believe the more you know about human memory, because that is the bread and butter of their job, the more likely they're going to understand how best to interview every individual.
What began as academic research has emerged as a practical set of skills that are known in the trade as the cognitive interview.
Because what we said yesterday, if people don't know the answer, they often make it up.
The whole point of the cognitive interview is to gather information from cooperative witnesses to increase the quantity of information gained and also to make sure that the quality is absolutely spot on.
Back at the police station, our witnesses are in the midst of their cognitive interviews. It's up to the police teams treating this as a real crime to make sense of what they're being told.
She was quite of a young age, around 25-ish. Well, I don't know, she might have been younger than that. Probably was. Or maybe she wasn't. One of the two.
Okay.
So she either was or wasn't.
Right.
I was aware of a slight altercation.
Rule 1 of cognitive interviewing is to let the interviewees do most of the talking.
Began effing and jeffing, like swearing quite vociferously. And,
Not a problem for Detective Sergeant Wendy Haslam, who was interviewing, or rather listening to Eddie.
Visibility jackets. The next thing, it got more violent.
Well, the reason we've asked him to do a free recall and we don't interrupt is so that he's using his own words and his own memory.
This geezer was doing all the swearing, dived on top of him. And it began, I thought he was just pummeling him, like he seemed to be pummeling him like that.
If we were to stop him or ask questions and stop that flow, it becomes a stop-start thing, so there's no fluidity to it, and it becomes quite disjointed.
And somebody said, he's bleeding, he stabbed him. I couldn't believe it, something like that happened, you know, in front of you, just sitting there.
After 10 minutes, Eddie's free recall draws to a natural conclusion. And Wendy begins the next stage in the interview process.
Thanks very much for that. What I want you to do is just concentrate from when you arrived at the bar to sitting down.
At this point of the interview, what Wendy's doing is just asking him to focus totally on what happened when he first went into the pub, not around the event or anything like that, simply on one little part of what he did.
Being a gentleman, I let the girls get served first. And
the memory is lots of different rooms. So we've opened the door that he's already unlocked, if you like, about what happened when he went into the pub to go and sit down to eat. And we're keeping him in that room.
I finished my meal, then I heard his shouting, his raised voices, like.
We'll follow Eddie's sequence of events, if you like, to the next room in his memory, and then we'll ask a lot more probing questions around that, because that's the way that Eddie's remembered it, and that's the sequence of events that's best for him.
When the language started going, I turned around and I thought, what the hell's going on? What's going on here, like? Somebody said, oh, bloody hell, he's been stabbed.
Picture it in your mind now, Eddie, and I want you to just sit for a moment, just quietly, and just get those specific actions in your mind now.
Wendy is doing the cognitive reinstatement, so she's asking him to slow down, close his eyes if he needs to think about exactly where he was and what he could see. So she's really focusing in his mind where we believe the assault took place that caused the victim to die.
Have you got them there?
Yeah,
Can you see them? Right, describe in as much detail everything you saw.
So in effect, she's trying to make him put himself back to the scene so that he can look round again and see everything.
I'd say hit him 3 times, or maybe 4. Yeah.
You described it as pummeling before,
Yeah,
didn't you?
pummeling,
So
yeah.
what sort of speed was he using to do it?
Oh, fairly rapid, wasn't slow.
Right, are you able to demonstrate it for me?
If you want like that.
OK then. So with that
Like
sort
that.
of rhythm that
Yeah,
you've just done
yeah.
there.
Hopefully, that will give him time to focus on what he did see and recall some events that he may not have already told us. A very significant part of the interview.
What was strange was I don't normally eat vegetables and stuff, but I normally like peas. And I was eating them because I normally like peas. I like them quite salted peas.
In the other interview room, Nick has spent nearly 2 hours on his free recall. But DS Andrea Wilkinson has been able to learn very little about the murder itself.
There was a nice pattern on the floor, sort of a swirly pattern, I think, darkish in colour. And the walls were they might have needed renovating. There were some scratches. The tables were brownish as well. Okay. Where am I up to?
Some people's minds work in a very logical way, and what he's displaying is he's took her instructions quite literally, because he's obviously got some kind of an analytical thought process. When Andrea's actually said to him, tell me in as much detail as possible and don't leave anything out, he's actually gone into great detail, which is good. We want the detail, but what we need is the detail about the actual event itself.
So you just keep hold of that thought.
It's a setback for the police. Nick, who it had been hoped would be a star witness, has failed to deliver.
So let me just go over that bit again, so as we're clear.
And worse still, it seems that Eddie has got things badly wrong.
How do you want to refer to him, so as we can get it clear?
I would say he was the assailant.
Right, so you want to call him the assailant?
Yeah.
He's convinced that the murderer was actually the victim.
The one who's having a go at the girl first, you want to call the assailant, and it's the assailant that was effing and jeffing and swearing.
Oh, definitely.
What's interesting here is Eddie has called our victim the assailant. Now, what Eddie does is, you've got to look at his personality. He's 71 years old. He's probably a gentleman, and in the generation when Eddie was young, men didn't treat women badly. He sees anybody who treats women badly in a bad light, so he's given our victim the tag of an assailant, which is basically with his principles and his values.
It's too late to interview anyone else today. The police will have to wait till the morning to see what they can discover from the rest of their eyewitnesses.
Okay, we're here at Sedgley Park, interview unit. You've met my colleague, DC Story, who's just in the observation room. Obviously, you're aware that quite a serious incident has occurred.
It's the start of a second day of interviewing. The police are hoping for a clearer picture from the remaining witnesses.
What I'd like you to do...
Picture where you were in your mind. If it helps, close your eyes.
In as much detail as you can, is tell me everything you remember from yesterday, from the point when things started.
Yeah, sure.
Does that make sense?
I remember very little, actually, but this is what I do remember.
We were having lunch, I think it was around 2:30.
There was two of them, I spotted them, with high-vis jackets on. And they were sat on one end of the bar, facing the lounge.
While not everyone remembers what happened before the fight,
It is all a bit of a blur, to be honest.
everyone recalls what happened once the shouting started.
All of a sudden, you can hear the sounds of fighting going on.
Trouble is, it's at this crucial point that our eyewitnesses remember things differently.
In the process, you know, a glass was sort of like knocked off the bar and what have you, as they were pushing each other.
There was a few glasses thrown.
And then it sort of led to sort of fist fighting and sort of all over the place, really. And
There was no punching or anything going on. It was just one guy on top of the other one rolling around.
One of them threw the other against the bar.
the guy like, in the high-vis jacket was just standing over this other guy kicking him, and he wouldn't stop kicking him.
And then I heard somebody shout he'd been stabbed.
I actually said to the person next to me, oh, I don't think he's actually been stabbed, they were just fighting.
Shortly after that, somebody got up and goes, I stabbed him. I stabbed him.
I don't know who had a knife, if anyone. I don't know who stabbed him, if anyone.
I have to say that I don't know who was stabbed.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was the first guy that was stabbed or the guy who was with the fluorescent jacket guy.
By this time, the gentleman who shouted that I stabbed him, he got up.
And while this commotion was going on, he just kind of like left. He didn't run.
and the other two guys just got up and ran out the pub.
So I'm guessing that's not really very helpful.
In the pub, no one was expecting a fight, let alone a stabbing. You can understand why some confusion might creep in. But these confusions are not random. They're known to science. In another of our